Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Inferno cast. This is episode 34, 34. That equals 7 when you add them together, and that's going to be an important number as we go along here. I am Inferno Fox, the host of this podcast and of YouTube's Inferno Fox Gaming. And we here on the Inferno cast are available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. Also joining me is my fantastic cast and crew. We have Jason the 13th of the YouTube channel, Jason the 13th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Not a problem. And as you saw, I did get the first video up and going, so hopefully that's a good sign to continue going again.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely excited to get some more of that Pokemon Scarlet, Violet, and more gameplay going
Mhm.
and whatnot. And we also have the fantastic Stormrosesky of YouTube channel and Twitch channels of Stormrosesky. Storm, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we also have a special guest, three of them. We have three special guests. It's like the Turks, except
Yeah.
these are uh Hillbilly. We have Strife 84 and JJ Jabroni. And first introducing Hillbilly, aka Hardicus. He's one of my closest friends and a fellow JRPG lover. Hillbilly, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. And next up is Strife 84. He's another close friend of mine and fellow lover of our main topic today. Strife, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, we have JJ, yet another close friend of mine, one I've known since I was 10 years old, so he knows my deepest, darkest secrets. So you can reach him at sidekickdad.com. Not only for that, but also his site provides tips into dad's life. JJ, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Inferno. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the plug. I appreciate it. Look forward to our discussion today, man.
Yeah, definitely. And so today we are totally dedicating this episode to a certain title that is having a release this week, and that is Final Fantasy VII. You know it, you love it. It's one of the cornerstones for a lot of us old dogs here whom have been playing video games forever, or RPGs or JRPGs, what have you. And we're really celebrating the release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which also is coming out this week. That is on Thursday, February 29th. Reviews for that game has released, and it currently sits at a Metacritic score of 92, which is the highest rated game in 2024 thus far. And of course, Metacritic is an aggregate of a number of reviews. In this instance, it's over 123 reviews. And really, the inception of the OG, the original, the PS1 title, essentially saw the company Squaresoft move the Final Fantasy series, where it had 6 entries on Nintendo systems, from Nintendo to Sony's first console system, which, while that led to some bad blood between Square and Nintendo, at least for a few years, the Sony PlayStation was the better console to develop JRPGs and RPGs like this for. I mean, there are some that could argue the Nintendo 64 would be the stronger system, but the PlayStation boasted easily a higher amount of storage via CD-ROM media and at a much cheaper development cost. This extra storage allowed Squaresoft to tell a story about a spiky-haired protagonist working with his allies to save the world. And I believe far better than what it would have been on the Nintendo 64. And remember, this was Mr. Nintendo fanboy here, growing up with that, and that's me saying that. But before I get into the actual discussion, we're going to throw out a spoiler warning. The OG game has been out for over 25 years. We're going to be discussing general plot points of the OG of Final Fantasy VII, but as a heads up, we are not discussing spoilers for the newest entry, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, even though it's not out, comes out as of the recording of this video this week. Spoilers, of course, it's the internet. They're out there. If you really wanted to, you could spoil it. But we're not going to do that here at the Inferno cast. So let's just open the discussion just to kind of say, ask you guys when you played the OG, the original Final Fantasy VII game, and I'll ask if you played the PS1 version or any other ports of it. Hillbilly, go ahead and break it open here.
Well, I played it on the original PlayStation. It was actually, if I remember correctly, the first PlayStation 1 game I actually got. I believe I got them both on the first Christmas that PlayStation was out.
Excellent. Jason the 13th, how about you?
Again, same thing. PlayStation all the way for the original one. I had before I got my own copy of it, and my dad and my older brother, they got it, and they are the ones that really introduced me into Final Fantasy.
Nice. And Strife, how about you?
I started playing in the fall, the year it came out. I actually had some friends at school. We were talking about RPGs, and they said, if you like RPGs, this is the one you've got to play. And that cemented my love for JRPGs even more.
Nice. JJ, how about you?
So for me, I think it was the fall of 1997, whatever that Christmas. My birthday falls in November, so it might have been around that time. But I remember being big into liking Zelda, and this felt like the next progressive step, into the RPG, much larger world, and the graphics were phenomenal. I can't remember for the life of me how I was like, I gotta have that game, but it might have been the marketing behind it, and just seeing some of the cutscenes and so forth, and the promotional, lead up to putting it out there, that it was just like, gotta have this game, and seemed like everyone was talking about it at school as well.
Yeah, and we're gonna I want to touch upon the marketing aspect of that, but before I do, Storm, how about you? Have you tried Final Fantasy VII at all?
No, big old negative. So I'm gonna enjoy listening to everyone's opinions about Final Fantasy, because there was one that my husband played it more recently on the PlayStation, and yeah, that's nothing like what you guys are going to be talking about. So no, I have nothing positive, or not positive, but nothing really productive right now to contribute to the discussion. So
Oh, don't worry. Well, I'll figure a way to rope you in and include you on some stuff here.
I know. I'm here, but I'll enjoy taking a back seat for a little bit.
No worries. So one of the funny things with Seven is, not only is it lauded as one of the most played JRPG titles, as well as a favorite of many, but Jason the 13th, you kind of mentioned about how it introduced you to Final Fantasy itself. Seven kind of had that. It was well regarded for opening the floodgates, as it were, to the RPG genre for many people in the West. JG, you mentioned really about the whole marketability about it. One of the funny things that I remember with the marketing of Final Fantasy VII is just seeing it. There was tons of commercials. I remember seeing magazine ads, like the posters and everything like that. But if you guys recall, I'm having you guys kind of look back, your memory is 25 plus years. The marketing on it really didn't include any of the actual battle system or gameplay or anything like that. It was mostly just the movies themselves, the on kind of the ongoings ons, everything like that. Maybe there was like a second or two of Cloud doing a limit break or something, but it didn't feature the actual RPG type gameplay. And really, that was kind of on purpose, because it's like it's like, okay, let's catch them with the flashy graphics and everything like that. Up, in for a penny, in for a pound. They actually enjoy the I don't want to say action, but it's kind of an action turn-based type system, since it's active time battle, but you're really getting into it. And it was really that really was the floodgates to open up the proverbial floodgates, as it were, to just RPGs and everything. Um, JJ, you mentioned about like how it was with school and everything like that. Um, Jason, do you recall Final Fantasy VII really being big in your own social groups back in the day?
Not in my social groups. Like I said, my dad actually played a lot of video games with us, and they found Final Fantasy VII before I did. And that is literally what got us roped in. Now, I do own the original Final Fantasy on the NES, and I can't recall playing it a lot like on the NES, to where I don't remember if we had that before Final Fantasy VII or if we ended up picking it up after the fact and tried the old one after Final Fantasy VII.
It's funny. I feel like you picked up that Final Fantasy on an early Funko Land
It's
pickup.
very, very well could have been.
I feel like
For
that's what
anyone
that.
who remembers that store.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of how that really sort of was. So I'm trying to remember when you picked that up because I think I was around the scene back then. Strife, how about you? Were there any like uh sort of mixing up in your own social groups with how popular Final Fantasy VII was getting?
Uh, there was a select few guys in my class that I did hang out with every now and then. I mean, we weren't like the best friends, but they're the ones who really got me to play Final Fantasy VII. I wasn't sure if I was going to play it or not. They were the ones who kind of coaxed me into it, and from there, I got some of my other friends into it. But for me, I think I went down the rabbit hole of Final Fantasy far worse than anybody else. I
Oh,
definitely went out and bought older ones after that.
there you go. Very good. Definitely glad to hear it. And I know you've beaten all of them too. So that's awesome. And that's really one of the I've heard another content creator on YouTube, Pro Jared, where he had said Final Fantasy VI is a favorite. A lot of people think that 9 is the best. 7 would probably be lauded as the most important because of how much it got us into that sort of type series and everything. Um,
Yeah.
and and Hillbilly, you've been playing Final Fantasy since before 7, right?
Oh yeah, I had the actual original Nintendo Final Fantasy. That's how long I've been playing it.
If I could bet, this was probably set. If I could guess, 7 was probably the fourth of the mainline series that you played like me.
Oh yeah, I played 1, 2, and then 3 for the Super Nintendo, which we all know is 6, and then obviously 7. Yeah, so you got it exactly right.
Yeah, and if you're an idiot like me, you've also got the Game Boy ones where that's Final Fantasy Adventure, Final Fantasy Legends 1 through 3, which those aren't actual Final Fantasy titles. 1 through 3 are actually part of the Saga series, renamed Final Fantasy in the West, and then Final Fantasy Adventure, that actually had Final Fantasy as a title, but that branched into what's known as the Mana series, like Secret of Mana. Okay,
Got
enough
all
of the
those.
yes, yeah. So kind of getting back to the game itself. There are a number of moments within the game, as well as the aspects of the gameplay itself that are really quite memorable. This includes like breeding chocobos, Sephiroth walking through the flames at Nibelheim, the Knights of the Round summon, and more. But more than that, it also includes the when you played the game itself. And we kind of touched upon this a little bit because we kind of said, okay, I played it. Most of us whom have played it, we've all played it on the original PlayStation. Um, for me, and I'll say this, I actually played this. I didn't actually play it when I first played it. I remember it was the summer between eighth and ninth grade, and I was over at my buddy Ray's house, and uh, Tony and his rich dad had a PlayStation back then, and so he brings the PlayStation over, and so Ray and I are watching Tony playing Final Fantasy VII, and we're just like amazed at just how much of a leap 7 was compared to Final Fantasy 3, obviously 6 Japan. And I just remember being just amazed, especially with like the battle system. And even as I replay the game now, I'm often reminded and kind of placed back into that sort of summertime back then. And like if I listen to music from the game, I'm often reminded of like the emotions and whatnot I felt when I played that part of the game. Um, Kind of going back to the actual game itself. And JJ, I'm gonna pick on you on this. Uh, what are some of the most memorable aspects that you remember, or you can remember on the OG, on the original Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah, you hit on a lot of them. I wrote down that the weapon fights. I remember those being like extremely difficult and hard. Um, there's the emerald and the ruby weapon, and those fights were, definitely took some expert skill to get through. Chocobo racing, I mean, or and breeding, you know, doing that so that you can get the gold chocobo, get off to that island out in the middle of nowhere and get Knights of the Round Table, and just gathering all the summons. There's countless amount of summons, and each one of them had their own cutscene that I guess you could probably skip through, but I used to watch a lot of them. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hitting like Ifrit and just nailing, whoever I was up against. And Knights of the Round Table, of course, being the longest one. I mean, sitting through that definitely added to my time through the game, being over 100 plus hours. But I remember getting really engrossed in the storyline. And funny enough, being around that age, being a teenager, that love triangle going on between Cloud, Tifa, and Arieth, just kind of rooting for a certain one or another at that point in time, and seeing how it was going to play out. But hitting on a lot here, but the trying to gear up toward being that the game itself being 3 discs long and getting that double casing was like phenomenal. So you remember going through the game, and it'd be a big deal to hit up to the next disc. Yep, there it is. Excellent. And I remember that getting, gearing up towards the end boss, the Sephiroth being, total um, baddie at the end. I'm like, we've got to really like make sure I'm level 99 all across the board. And then you go in and basically one shot him at the end. His more geared and set up for the ruby weapon and Omega and stuff. So that was just some of my memories. And definitely as I was thinking about this remembered I was like, I got to pull out my old original strategy guide, because I walked through that through the entire game. I remember that I was probably being like Tony, we were probably like one of the few that were using it. I remember I think you had it, but you kind of like weren't really using it. So remember us having discussions about that. It was fun. Great
Yeah,
memories.
it's funny too, because like I remember Storm, I don't know if you remember this, but like something like 20 years ago, I think I still lived at the house, but I hadn't I was like a year before I moved out, where Storm and her husband come by and say, you know what, can you beat Final Fantasy VII for us? Because we want to know, we haven't seen it. And I had to pull out like an old save or something, and I threw it in the PS2, and my characters were at level 60.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I think I should be able to do this. And I remember I got to, one winged angel Sephiroth, and then I died. And I'm like, I died? I lost?
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to lose. And it was like, I'm like, really? And I'm like, well, sorry guys, I can't show you that ending. It was just it was kind of like, that's a weird thing. Oh
the
man.
story the storyline was so good. I just remember the reason I remember bringing my characters up that high is because I didn't want it to end. It was just so much fun, and going through every NPC and listening to them. That's what I really took much longer than I needed to. Like you said, level 60, you probably were fine to beat the game at that point, but yeah, I held off.
No, it's all right. I mean, hey, that's where multiple playthroughs come in, right, Strife? I'll ask you, kind of, what are some of your most memorable aspects with Seven? And does it include the 100 times that you replayed it?
Well, JJ touched on a lot of them. But yes, it does include. I still enjoy the game. I actually replayed it again about 3 weeks ago.
Nice.
Um, because I do have it. I still have it on the PlayStation 1, and I do have the Switch port of it. So I do still play it from time to time whenever I get the urge for nostalgia. The one thing that always stood out for me from the game is, and why it's still one of my absolute favorite games, is just the characters and their storylines. And so many of them had so many like moments in the game for themselves. It wasn't just about Cloud and Tifa and their relationship and Aerith and their relationship. You had Sid, who had his relationship with Shira and how he found out that her messing up his chances to go to space was actually her saving his life. Uh, you had Cat Sith's portrayal, which not everybody saw coming. You had Yuffie and her home situation and why she was the way she was when it came to the materia. Everybody had that little bit about their character that came out in the story, and it wasn't one dimensional with the main character having all these big moments, but all these big moments from the little characters coming through, and that's what made the story so good for me.
Yeah, and it's such an amazing way where video games itself allow for that type of experience where with a movie it's an hour and a half to 3 hour journey into a world, and that's it. And sometimes that world gets extended through something like Lord of the Rings where it's 3 movies long, or the 4 hour versions of said movies. And then obviously you have the books, literally the books of that the movie is based off of, or other book series and everything like that. But with video games, it's not only just like a book. I would say it's these JRPGs are and can be like saga book length, but it can also help immerse you and bring you into that world and allow you to have an experience that you want to have. Maybe you want to take Aerith on the date to Gold Saucer. Maybe you want to be like Jason and take Yuffie on the date. Maybe you want to be like JJ and take Barrett on the date. Final Fantasy VII let you do that, and just that whole for me it was really experiencing that sort of emotion where like I really felt like the closest to Cloud, obviously him being the main character, but like I identified with the fact that Cloud, his true identity was he's just a short little dorky guy who has a crush. I mean, that basically was my teenage years. Shoot. Oh, Hillbilly, I want to ask you, were there any other memorable aspects of the OG Final Fantasy VII maybe we haven't touched upon that you enjoyed?
Yeah, there was a few of them. I think one of the moments that really sticks out for me was, and my memory is fuzzy because I have not played this in easily a decade, but I remember at one point I don't know if it was one of the weapons like coming through the water up to that coastal city with the big cannon,
Oh yeah.
and the cannon just sucking in energy and then just boom. That was always stuck in my mind. Um, the other big one for me was, I'll try to avoid spoilers, but we'll just call it the death. Like that was to me was like, wow, did that really just happen? Is this permanent? Like for me, that was and I've played a ton of RPGs. That's the first one I can recall a character, a party character like permadying, and
Yeah.
that to me that was just crazy.
Yeah, literally a main party member, and it was planned from the start. It was going to be either Cloud, Aerith, or Barrett that was going to die. That was in like the original development, of course, up and also including stuff like it being based in New York City, it having witches and everything like that, and other concepts might have gone to Parasite Eve and Final Fantasy VIII respectively, but that core concept of a character permadeath that was pretty heavy. I just remember that sort of shock too. I think we were nearing the end of the week that we had spent over at Ray's, and that was one of the last scenes that I remember seeing before uh Tony got picked up by Rich Dad. And like it was just something that was like shocking. Like how could this like how could this and like and Hillbilly, you and I have dealt with the character deaths before in Final Fantasy, but it hadn't hit that close. I feel.
That's like it's also one of the first times I remember it happening. And to being such a main character, like I mean, Eris was in my party the whole time. Like it's just crazy that that happened.
Yeah, I yeah.
And the other moments I enjoyed were like Vincent. I mean, I was a teenager at the time, edgelord. Like Vincent obviously is the little badass that comes out.
Your emo
Uh,
phase.
exactly. um, the other thing I really enjoyed was when Cloud started to like lose it, and just you could like almost feel him fracturing over the course of several hours.
Yeah, and that's something. Final Fantasy games I felt have done a really good job of sort of depicting that sort of like psychosis, as it were. And you've had other characters in previous games sort of have that, but not really. I mean, what was some of the like there was a suicide attempt by a main character in Final Fantasy VI, for example, just due to loneliness and despair and everything like that. But it's like you really did a good job of describing that, like the whole breakdown and everything that he has, and just how put together he was before that really was just a mirage, and whom he is at the end of the game is really like his true self. That definitely amazing. Jason, did we touch upon everything that was memorable to the game to you, or is there anything else that you can think of
There's only one
besides
other
Yuffie?
only one other thing that for me it was memorable because nobody else would ever have this situation, most likely.
Oh yeah.
There might have been a few. So other than Legend of Zelda games, I don't know very many other games that you got to change the name of your character. And since this came out during school and I was doing a project and I was writing a story to this project, and I named Cloud after the main character's name in my project, which was, of course, Zach. So I had no problems with the entire game until you get to the actual Zach in the game and all his background and trying to decipher a Cloud named Zach from the real Zach. And oh my God, what a headache that was. I had to play through that. And then I had to go watch my brother's playthrough to read it all and make sense of the entire story behind Zach.
God, and how freaking confusing is that when Cloud
Oh my
literally
God.
inserts his persona from Zach? Oh my God.
Sounds like a cluster.
Oh,
I mean, you get to Zach's parents' house and they're going, yeah, our son Zach is a soldier, and then I'm going, I'm right here. What are you talking about?
oh man.
Oh my God. I'm sure the only other people that had that issue would be anyone named Zach who played the game and named him after himself. That was definitely a memorable moment. Not a highlight that would be on anyone else's top 10 list of moments from the game, but that was definitely a memorable time.
Oh my gosh. And it's funny too. It's funny too, because since the game, and I've kind of mentioned how much of a pedigree the game has had, uh Squaresoft, now Square Enix, they know it because they've returned back to Final Fantasy VII in a number of
Yes.
ways. One way is by bringing them back in other series, up to and including Final Fantasy Tactics, at like having Cloud as a playable character. Kingdom Hearts having Final Fantasy characters in the first two, like the first two entries, and even like Chain of Memories. Chain of Memories, the Game Boy Advance version, was the first time Cloud did appear on a Nintendo system. So there you go. And obviously Smash Brothers. Uh, I'm gonna say that Square has really milked the Final Fantasy VII train by releasing additional content, such as the sequel movie Advent Children, which very pretty, very flashy, but the story really doesn't really kind of make any sense. But that's okay because it's a very pretty looking game.
Oh my god, that movie is so pretty.
The prequel game Crisis Core, which the
Yes.
remaster is much, much, much better in insofar as running better, and I feel like is a better experience than what was on the original PSP. Strife, hopefully, you're not going to kill me on that because I know you maxed out your time clock and literally got your Zack on your PSP version of Crisis Core 100% maxed out. But I do believe the remaster that just released late in 2022 is a better version. And we of course have the best Final Fantasy VII spin-off game. Oh, not really spin-off game, but in the series, and that is the fantastic PS2 Dirge of Cerberus. That's right. Dirge of Cerberus. It was an action-based game starring Vincent, and yeah, no, I've heard a lot of people saying that that's not great,
And
but
here I thought
How
you were gonna
dare
go with
you.
the PlayStation 1's fighting game, the Urgize game.
oh yeah, it's funny. I didn't mention
And
that because of how um kind of obscure that is.
yo,
That
that was a
essentially
very obscure one. But they
and it
also did
essentially had
another.
a good part amount of the party members from
And
that.
was it the PSP that had the other one? The other fighting game that they put out for Final Fantasy, where it's all
Oh
Final
yeah,
Fantasy characters?
Dissidia. Yep.
Yeah, that's the one I never got to play. I'm
Yeah,
just sad on that one.
it was good, but yeah, all you and I would be able to play is probably computers or
Well,
maybe
right.
yeah. And then obviously between Dirge of Cerberus and for like 10 years, constantly teased with remakes and remasters of Final Fantasy VII. It's like that meme, if there's a crisis, Square Enix just has to hit the Final Fantasy VII remaster remake button, which they did with Final Fantasy VII Remake, which released in 2022, or I'm sorry, 2020, not 2022, 2020. And it puts a hyper focus on one specific part of the OG, that being Midgar. And it also, and even since they released Final Fantasy VII Remake, they did release more Final Fantasy VII content, like their Battle Royale game. I wish Simbu was here because it'd be a Battle Royale game for him that he could play. The First Soldier, oh, wait, it closed down after a year. And then a mobile gacha game called Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. So whole bunch of word vomit on all of the releases since the OG. I'm going to focus on just one thing, and that's the Final Fantasy VII remake that released in 2020. I'm gonna ask you guys if you've played Final Fantasy VII Remake and if the change to action-based gameplay affected your decision to play the game and or motivation to finish it. Jason.
I'm not 100% sure if that had anything to do with it because I only got maybe a quarter of the way through the game and I set it down and never went back to it. I really do need to get back to it and play it and finish it. But I mean, I love the way it was playing and everything, and I don't know. It didn't draw me in as good as it did the original.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's part of like how we were talking about how big the original was in our social groups, and now that we're old dogs or older now, we don't quite have that sort of like grouping, as it were, or in-person sort of excitement and everything. Maybe that's possibly it. Um, Hillbilly, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Tell us your unadulterated opinions, hopefully omitting swears.
Oh no, are you sure you really want this?
Yes.
uh well, to touch back on something here, like my friend group was not really into video games when this first came out. So I never had that, hype for everybody. Um as far as switching to action based, it absolutely affected my decision. I am a turn based purist when it comes to Final Fantasy. Um, you and I have had many discussions on this. I don't think there's been a good Final Fantasy since 10. So that absolutely affected my decision to play the remake here. And I didn't pick it up until I got it in a $10 bargain bin. That being said, to me, the game was very pretty. I felt it was drawn out way more than it should have been. There was like the addition stories of Avalanche and covering them a little bit more was a good addition, but overall, I would have been upset if I paid $60 for it.
No, it's interesting because like admittedly sort of struggled with the switch to the action based gameplay. I too would have liked the ATB turn based sort of gameplay on that, and I remember them saying, well, it's in there, you just put it on classic mode and it's essentially the characters attack for you and you just sit there until like the ATB bar fills up and then you can cast a spell or do a special ability, but it's not the same. I struggled a little bit with the fact that I just want to be Cloud, but you can't just be Cloud. You have to switch between the characters to be effective in battling and in gameplay. And it was really this game that motivated me to sort of have my own existential midlife gaming crisis where like this is where the direction of this video game or gaming or my favorite series is going. What about other series that have that sort of core gameplay? I went to Dragon Quest. I played all 10 Dragon Quest games that were not MMOs. And I'm like, okay, is there something to be said about action-based gameplay? I went and played all 10 Ys series games. Well, technically 1 through 9, and then Ys Origins. That was an action RPG thing. So, like, that being said, it was a thing where, like, now if I went back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, it'd be a thing where maybe now I could identify with it because of melding the old and the new with what is the new. Final Fantasy is, and it's an action game series now. It's not turn-based. That's just how Final Fantasy is now.
And it breaks my heart.
So Strife, I'm hoping that you're gonna be the counterpoint on your experience with Final Fantasy VII Remake. What are your thoughts? Did the action-based gameplay affect your decision to play?
So it didn't affect me at all. I mean, I understand the purist aspect, especially with Final Fantasy, and especially the ones we grew up with where they were turn-based, and I still love turn-based games. I love grid-based RPGs. I still love turn-based RPGs. I go back and play a lot of the old ones because of that gameplay. But I've also played a lot of the new action-based, games, open world games where you're running around and it's real-time action and you're having to switch between party members and fight. So to me, that didn't really bother me too much. I
Gotcha.
mean, sometimes I thoroughly enjoy that, being able to just mash buttons and hit the right things and switch between party members and which party member is going to be best for this situation. So to me, that didn't bother me too much. You still had the characters, and as Hardicus pointed out, you have more of a backstory on the Avalanche characters, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Obviously, it makes a certain part of the game even more heartbreaking, but you have that deeper backstory on them, which just makes you appreciate them so much more and why they're with Barrett and they're with Tifa. They're fighting that fight that they're fighting. So I thoroughly enjoyed the game, and I'm looking forward to Rebirth a lot, actually.
Excellent. Yeah, and definitely make some good points there where it really helps get the character development and where you mentioned their fate, Avalanche's fate in the OG that happened at anywhere from like hours, I think 4 to 6, whereas in remake it happened around hour 25. So you can really tell that it expanded the overall size of it. And Rebirth, just remember, the Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PS4, I want to say it was like 50 gigabytes or something like that. It was was it one or two Blu-ray discs, Strife? I'm trying to remember. I thought it was one.
It's just one.
So it was about 45 gigabytes. The on the PS5, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is two Blu-ray discs, multi-layered. 300 gigabytes is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, one of the biggest games that is being released. Um, JJ, I'm curious, have you tried Final Fantasy VII Remake at all? Have you checked it out or anything?
Yeah, I did play the when they first released, the first part of it, and honestly, I was skeptical, just because, it's a remake. So I mean, how much are they going to change? And I mean, but at the same time, it was like, being that this is one of my most favorite games of all time, it was like I have to try it, I have to check it out, and I was skeptical as well. I think with the action-based turn system, um, but I think, I listening to Hillbilly, I was agreeing with, I think, with that turn-based part of it, especially because you were able to take your time to go through, fighting and really doing what you wanted to do versus kind of feeling kind of rushed. However, um, that being said, I felt the way they did it kind of transitioned really well. And even though it was still moving, it's like you still have a chance to kind of pick through your menus or decide, the different kind of combinations that you're going to use, um, to take action in a particular fight. But I enjoyed the graphics being a major upgrade. Obviously, I mean, the graphics back in 1997 were amazing when they came out, and it was only fitting that they gave that same treatment again, but in present time. But I thought, for the most part, Square's nailed it. The only thing is I haven't been able to play through more of it. Um, but I mean, I did finish that first piece that came through. I just know that, me personally, that's a game I really want to give my all and time to because it deserves it. And I know I'm gonna, basically fall back in love with it going through the remake. I know there's going to be some is some different twists and turns that we didn't get the first time around. So yeah, overall I thought it was pretty good so far.
Cool. Yeah, and it's you mentioned like the twists and turns. That was one of the things that was the hook, a huge hook in the both the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake and the DLC of Intergrade. There was a thing where I wish Jamie Owls was here because after finishing Intergrade, there's a scene where um one of the characters who we thought was gone might not be, and they're getting ready to enter into a very well-known location in Final Fantasy VII, and to have a literal reunion that I never thought would have ever happened, and seeing this character about to walk into there and have that reunion, I was like, I was literally speechless and with my mouth hanging open, and I'm like, and of course, fade to black, and that's the end of the thing.
Yeah, of course.
And it was a thing where I was just like, it's just it's a thing where like we as Final Fantasy VII lovers of the lore and the mythos, we kind of spend the time sort of shipping characters and everything like that. And this was a ship where I could really get behind because my whole thought process is I'm a Cloud Tifa shipper because I feel like that is the natural Cloud who he really is. This is his real identity that I feel that is whom I see him with. Um, so the idea of the other true couple actually being a thing, I was just like, wow. Um, Storm, hopefully you're still here, sitting back, drinking your glass of wine. So, but I'm going to call on you, Storm, and knowing that Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, but Remake as well, it's more action based and everything with like that action gameplay and the fact that there's multiple difficulties, including at like a hard and a normal, and then like an easy mode. Do you see yourself getting into like a Final Fantasy VII remake game, knowing it's action based?
I could. I think so. Honestly, now that I have something that maybe I can play it on and a more, I don't want to say sturdier, a heftier gaming system with the PlayStation, then yeah, I can see checking it out. I'm not as adverse to the turn-based things as some others, but that's okay. So yeah, definitely. I am still here. I was just eye water yawning. The day is catching up to me. Students are tiring, and I've got more tomorrow. So, but yeah, I have only one other comment. And back when you were talking about the names, I love that they've got fancy names like Cloud and then Zach. I know that was Jason the 13th's named character, but the fact that a character in the game is named Zach, it's like, really? With all these like unusual names and then Zach. It's just different.
And I like that about Sub, where they actually had beyond like some of the nearly all of the main characters of the game, they had some like characters with common names. The only time that I remember a common name character was in a Chrono Trigger when there was a character that was named Glenn. Like that was only a time that I could think of where there was like, I think before that there was one Final Fantasy IV had Cecil or Cecil, depending on, I guess, Rosa too, but like that was pretty much it with that. And then Final Fantasy VII, it has Vincent, it has Zach, it has Johnny, it has uh then I'm of course my mind is like
Jesse.
Jesse, yeah, Jesse, Marlene, there's a Marlene. I'm trying to
Wow.
remember.
So those are a lot more normal than I thought, but like they have fancy names too. So I'll
Yeah,
insert my
and of course the other main characters' names that they're going to be based on sort of the mythos that the character personalities or the story takes them, like Aerith. Aerith, we got it as Eris. Aerith, if you notice, has the word Earth built into it within it. That is not an accident because she's meant to be like a guardian of the Earth. And then I think there was something with her mother, Ifalna, but I couldn't tell you. But like that's kind of the one of the neat gists with a lot of sort of the creation of a lot of those names. Um, so as we're wrapping things up here with Final Fantasy VII, I'm gonna hit you guys with a quick question, and we might have touched upon this, maybe not, and we're gonna start with Hillbilly. Hillbilly, who is your favorite character in Final Fantasy VII? Noting it doesn't have to be a playable character or a party member. And you're muted if you're talking. Hillbilly.
Or she stepped away.
No, I'm here. I was hitting the unmute and it was not working. I covered it a little bit earlier. I think for me, back in that time period, I think it was 15 or 16 when it came out. Vincent was my guy. Really quick, I just wanted to add a little thing on the combat for it, especially for like Robin, Jason, and maybe even JJ. Once I was able to switch to Tifa full time, it made the game a lot more fun and playable for me.
Ooh. For Final Fantasy VII remake, yeah,
for the remake, yeah.
That's a cool thing where they at least it has that sort of varied gameplay for the battles for the characters. And if you liked that varied gameplay, you're going to get more of it because Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has exploration elements where only certain characters can explore. Like if you want to use like a hook shot to hook and reach another platform, that's going to be Yuffie. If I think Red 13 can climb walls, I think Kate Shi can take boxes and throw them for some reason. I don't know why.
I had not heard about any of that, but that definitely sounds awesome.
So yeah. Strife, how about you? Who is your favorite character in Final Fantasy VII?
Well, most people who know me would be surprised to find out it's not the ninja. My favorite character was actually Red 13, my first playthrough. I loved Red.
Yeah, Red is cool. So you said your first playthrough, but who's your favorite now?
Well, playing Intergrade And I mean, that made me love Yuffie way more. Her battle style and integrate is just amazing to me. And I know I'm going to have fun with Rebirth using her. So,
Yeah, it'll be cool to find, and you can finally play as Red 13. He's no longer a guest character like he was in Remake. Although Sid and Vincent are not playable characters in Rebirth. They are only guest characters.
Huh.
Wah, wah.
Yeah. Sorry, Hillbilly.
Oh, 13 was my runner-up.
Yeah.
JJ, how about you? Who's your favorite character in Seven?
I'm gonna probably be on the nose here, but yeah, Cloud. I mean, just being able to be the main character, you feel like you're him, and you're going through that entire journey, at least through the original. Um, I feel like if I go through it again now, especially at this age, and I'm trying to remember a little bit just from the remake, but Barrett was, I mean, come on, machine gun on your hand. I mean, that was pretty awesome. And plus he's always got some attitude to give, and I like that. Kind of punking everyone around. But yeah, I mean, originally it was definitely Cloud.
Nice. Yeah, him with that big freaking Buster sword. I mean,
Yes, awesome.
uh, Jason the 13th. Who is your favorite character and why is it Kate Shee?
Yeah. Nah, you've actually alluded to it earlier when you called me out. My favorite character's been Yuffie, and I just fell in love with her since the moment she shows up and steals the materia, and just her whole little like outcast like character was just all up my alley. So, and
Yeah.
she still is my favorite character.
Yeah, it's a good favorite, and you'll enjoy Rebirth. One of the nice things is you don't have to technically you don't have to finish Remake to do Rebirth. There's a 5 minute prologue that it's like I guess it's like a 5 minute movie that gives you all of the events that have
Well,
occurred in
that's nice.
yeah, so like you can just jump right into Rebirth if you so wanted to. Which honestly, I'm gonna say
I still want to play the first one.
based on what I'm seeing, it seems like Rebirth is going to be the better game because there was a lot of that hallway syndrome that you had with Remake, and it's like, I like the idea of having that whole open zone thing. That yeah, with Final Fantasy VII, the OG, there was like forward progression, but the idea of going back to areas and everything will still be there in Rebirth, supposedly. Uh, so, Storm, who's your favorite character in Final Fantasy VII?
Loud.
Yes.
Really? I would have guessed
Yeah.
Red 13 just because he's a puppy.
No. I'm looking at the game and I've seen tons of images and stuff for it, and he just looks the coolest. So, I'm
Mhm.
going totally on aesthetics with this one. So, Cloud for sure.
Nice. Yeah, and obviously minus Cloud. I've already kind of touched upon that, just sort of identifying with him, but it's like Strife, I'm definitely excited for Rebirth. I'm taking 2 days off of work to be able to dedicate to just playing the darn game, knowing full well, I'm in the middle of a Persona 3 Reload playthrough that apparently that's going to have to get tabled because Final Fantasy VII is my favorite series of all time, and that's just it is what it is. Like Jason 13, you know that like if I'm in the middle of a game or anything, like when the Metroid Prime remaster came out last year, like I think we were talking about playing a game or we were doing something. Oh no, I think we were playing Fork Knife a lot, and I'm like, nope, Glenn.
Yep.
It's a thing where like going to disappear for a week or two, and I end up literally disappearing for a week just focusing on a new Metroid game because it's Metroid, but this is Final Fantasy. So all right, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to our special guests for joining us today in regards to our Final Fantasy VII discussion. This was definitely a fun, great time. Huge shout out again, Hillbilly, Strife, And JJ, just a quick side note with JJ, you can find his site at sidekickdad.com, where he provides a lot of really fun and cool tips in regards to dad's life. There will be a link to that site here in the description below. And again, shout outs to Jason the 13th and Stormrosesky. Again, their links are below. And our other normal crew members, Jamie Owls, Astrimedes, Simbu Darkfang, all of their links will also be in the description below. They'll be here for next week. Just again, thank you guys, and thank you the audience for joining us as well. Any last parting shots, guys? Anything else?
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you. It was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
thanks for having us.
Excellent. All righty. Thank you, and everyone have a great day.